Welcome to KDH Counseling's Leaning into Therapy series, where we explore therapeutic approaches and evidence-based protocols to give clients the most comprehensive understanding of therapy. Our goal is to empower clients with research-based interventions so they can make informed choices about their treatment. Join KD Holmes, a licensed professional counselor with 16 years of experience, and her team of clinicians as they share their expertise, insights, and therapeutic interventions. Get ready to delve into the world of therapy in this series specifically designed for clients by therapists.
Welcome to another episode of Leaning into Therapy. I am Whitney Storey, and here with me today is Monet David. And we're going to talk a little bit about what it is to work with folks on the LGBTQAI spectrum. I was really curious, Monet. It's been a year since you and I last talked about this. What has it been like since last year at this time working with queer clients in the therapy space?
I mean, more of the same, a little bit different, I suppose. I think like the biggest thing in the context of being a mental health professional and working with the queer community is that conversion therapy is back on the table. And for the uninitiated, conversion therapy is a heavily researched, proven ineffective, proven harmful approach at making queer people not queer. So that's sad. We're backsliding hardcore. And now I do want to make the distinction that while legally it is now allowable again, any licensing board worth its salt has already come out and said that while legal, not ethical. And those are two very big distinctions. So we do have the supports of our licensing boards as clinicians. But I think that there's this tear that happens now with queer people who are searching for good mental health resources of, okay, is this therapist going to be pro-conversion therapy, or are they going to try to make me not gay? Are they going to blame my sexuality on my problems instead of looking at it in an ethical lens and a queer affirming lens of it's not you, it's the world that's making you
Right.
pathological. You are not inherently pathological. And I'm really proud of this presentation. Coming into my own as an educator, I've come to realize that I really value historical and sociological contexts in educating people, because it's one thing to know, yeah, that's not a good thing to be a therapist and do conversion therapy, but the hows and whys are just as important. The context is just as important. So I do spend a lot of the time talking about what the relationship between queer people and mental health professionals has looked like throughout the decades.
I think that's I know I've told you this before, but that's one of the things that I love the most about your classes is your ability to bring in like the historical context, and not just history in terms of, what we think of with history, like US history, but also history in terms of what has been happening recently. Yeah, it's such a strength of yours, and it makes, maybe it's the autism in me, but like it makes everything makes so much more sense.
I'm glad to hear that. And that's the hope. That's the goal with it, right? Like it just feels so salient. And we don't counsel in a bubble. Clients don't exist and have lived experiences in a bubble. All of this is really valuable information. And I think it just informs and it allows clinicians to show up more confidently whenever there is tension of like, well, why would you say that you're a queer affirming therapist? Because historically, like therapy hasn't been very like affirming at all. And so the distinction feels important and valuable. And I think it allows people to say, well, what does it mean to be queer affirming? Well, it means that I know the history and I know the harms that my profession has caused, and I work really hard not to perpetuate those harms.
Yeah, I was thinking about from a place of cis, white, straight woman privilege, of how little I have to think about things like what's going on in the Supreme Court, especially as it applies to queer people. And I know as, you know, as a counselor, especially in the area where we are practicing, that like probably a lot of our peers are also people who don't have to think about these things. And so I wonder, what does it mean? I think especially because of who your clients are, what does it mean to your clients to have a therapist in town who is upfront and intentional about claiming being affirming and also having, you know, the chops to back it up?
I think for my clinical identity as a provider, it's really boosted my confidence because people are seeking me out, right? So I think there's like this mutual beneficial sort of situation where the client feels good, they know what they want, they've found that person, and then I feel good because I know they've done their work. Um, and so the feedback that I've gotten is like my previous therapist just didn't understand.
Hmm.
Um, and I typically attract, like, for whatever reason, I just get a lot of lesbians. I'm really big with lesbians. I'm really big with autistic lesbians. But like, there's this, my previous therapist just didn't understand. And how I kind of interpret that is maybe they made these really well-known cultural behaviors pathological unintentionally. Because I
Mm,
don't want to give the impression that I think every therapist is like this malicious, homophobic provider.
of
But like
course.
there's just the way in which queer community moves is the way it moves, and it's not inherently bad. It can work. It can be a product of the circumstance. And so I always just kind of read between the lines with that sort of feedback. And I'm like, yeah, I totally understand. Like you went on a date with your girlfriend for 3 dates and then you moved in together. Like kind of makes sense. And what I think it really helps is that sociological understanding of things. Wow, so you're a woman and you're partnered with another woman. And we know historically women are not compensated adequately as compared to men. So it's probably mutually beneficial for you two to move in together. Is it a little quick? Sure, but rent's really astronomical around here and it just makes sense. And there's a safety component too, that women are better in groups and more protected in groups. So yeah, of course you're going to want to move in. Like it's not necessarily like, oh, that's very quick. And I don't know, like applying like a heteronormative lens to it. And I think they appreciate it. And I think that's why they seek out clinicians who understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking again about my position in the community as somebody with privilege and how it really does feel like this is an example of one of those things where it's like, I can say I'm not racist, and at the same time, you know, microaggressions, intersectionality, and how really truly being an anti-racist or really truly being a queer affirming therapist is more than just like that surface level.
Yes, yes. And I do think clinicians can walk away from this presentation with tangible things to do differently, with both with paperwork, with action, with how they curate their office. And so I think not only are you getting a lot of theory and history, but you're also getting a lot of practice in there. And for me, I love that we were able to do that in 90 minutes. Like it's this lovely little, like, let's take a bite at it and but not overwhelm you. Like take these things and go and chew on it. And I do give a lot of resources at the end of like, I think you should read these texts. I think you should check out these additional trainings. Like this is just a really good starting off point. And so I'm hoping, and I think the feedback from people has been really positive in that way from participants. So it is this sort of like, I've been really interested in this. And going back to the original question that you asked, like what's different at this point, is that people are tired of panicking and
Mm,
want actionable things to do. And so I'm like, take this class, learn the actionable things to do, feel empowered, empower your clients, change up how you advertise for yourself, know that you're like becoming or really are queer affirming. And so I'm happy to provide that vehicle for actionable change.
That's such a good point. Like, that's another thing I think about the way that you teach
Mhm.
in the KDH Collective is, that the context of all of this also changes the way that we interact with clients in the therapy space, but also changes the way that we interact with clients before they even get to the therapy space with us. Yeah, it's really powerful to be able to come together in this class with you and then also with these other peers, sometimes brand new people, sometimes people that, familiar faces in our community, and then other people who've come through KDH Collective for other classes and everything. But to be able to refresh, get caught up on things like legislation, like you're talking about with conversion therapy, and then get beyond like that surface level way of being affirming and talk about, okay, now that I'm caught up, now that I'm here and I'm with all these peers, how do I translate this to being a more effective, more affirming therapist?
Yeah, it's very rewarding. And I think it would be like remiss not to acknowledge that I arrive with my educator position, and I'm very political because I think therapy is inherently political. I think access to mental health is incredibly political. So I think if that is a possible participant's like not their cup of tea, maybe the class isn't for them. And what I mean by that is just we have to look at the influence of legislation. We have to look at the influence of law, legalities. We have to look at elected officials and their influences on access to mental health because it's silly not to include it, right?
Yeah.
In that
It's one of those
context,
things that we've talked about where it's like it's not as if you are bringing politics into therapy. We are living in a time when therapy has been brought into politics. And so it really would be a it would be a crime to not talk about this.
Yeah. Well, and the reason queer people don't access or can't access therapeutic services is not because they don't want to. It's the barriers that exist in place of that. And so to be mindful of it as a provider it feels paramount. It feels very much about like aligned with our ethics and everything. So, and I think any queer person that you would survey would love for their queer identity to not be politicized, but here we are. It is, and we still have good work to do. And so I think this presentation is sort of like, how do you enter into that work really intentionally?
Well, as usual, I'm very excited about your class and getting the updates. This is one of those classes, audience, not to be like Monet's biggest fan, but this is one of those classes that like I enjoy going to every single year, because the content is so meaningful. Different things stand out. Like you do so much work in updating it and making sure it's like the most current, both in terms of like current events and also research and also ethics. So, therapists, if you're on the fence and maybe you're at that point, maybe you're close to renewal and you're like, I could really use an hour and a half of CEUs,
Of ethics, no less.
right?
Maybe
Ethics
add
week.
ethics.
So, yeah, I really invite you to join Monet for Sounds Gay. I'm in. Yeah, thanks so much for chatting with me, and
Thank you so much.
see you soon.
Counselors and social workers, now is the time to sign up for Sounds Gay, I'm In, an exploration of LGBTQIA+ ethics with our presenter, Monet David. Register at our website, and therapists, you can earn 1.5 CEs. The KDH Collective is an approved ACE provider with the Association of Social Work Board ACE program, and all of our courses are approved by NBCC. Hope to see you soon.